So, dude, Vorpal here, sitting for the next 20 minutes as I try my best to explain Horus Heresy. I'm an arts major. Subscribe to my Patreon so I can keep doing this. And I love Warhammer. Have you never read the Horus Heresy and don't intend to open your mind to the warp and read some of the best and worst writing in the galaxy? Well then this is for you. We'll also hook you up with some spicy memes. Have you already read every one of the 60 books but can't remember what happens in the first book while you reminisce at the biggest waste of your life you'll ever experience? Then this video is for you. Is your partner addicted to plastic crack and all its trimmings and communicates purely through Dawn of War quotes? Then this video will help get you up to speed and teach you how to speak to your partner. And hopefully you can enjoy the spicy meat. It's for all comers. One last note. GW, please don't hurt me. I was writing a script for these books, which is why I've read them all more than once. Yes, I hate myself. But due to your current acquisition of everyone's content except lore videos, I've adjusted course. Now, we're not here to fornicate with mega arachnids, so let's jump in. I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor. Spoiler alert! Oh wait, no, that's just some great fucking writing. I cannot begin to describe how good I think the beginning of this book is. The sheer fucking irony of it all is just... Basically, a man claiming to be the Emperor of mankind and his empire calling themselves the Imperium come across our heroes. So it's the Imperium against the Imperium and the Emperor against the Emperor. The Emperor tells them to bow to him and join mankind in a brilliant crusade across the stars, as is the birthright of mankind. In case you're new to all this, that is literally what the Space Marines and friends are doing. All he is asking for is fealty, which doesn't fly with our heroes. They tell them to join their Imperium of mankind and join their great crusade to claim mankind's birthright amongst the stars. Horus Lupercal, Primarch, Warmaster, tries peace and sends two of his favourite captains as envoys. The Emperor, no, not that Emperor, kills those two captains, and that's when Horus wakes up. It's here we meet our protagonist, Garviel Loken, as he storms the High City, capital of the Imperium, not that Imperium, a lunar wolf that lives, breathes, and shits on her like it's no one's business, as close to a good guy as you can get in a fascist society hell-bent on genocidally raging across the stars to wipe out anything that isn't human, and even some humans that don't agree with them. We also meet a bad one. Kind of. We'll get to him eventually though. Good guy Garviel Loken is captain of 10th Company of the Lunar Wolves, and he and his company make it into the Emperor's stronghold. Not that stronghold, where we basically just get a taste of how much of a Chad Garviel Loken is. Quick aside, this section of the book is surprisingly close to that of Gaunt's Ghost, when Gaunt is still a cadet commissar, also written by Dan Abnett and also a great series. Anyway, we take a quick interlude here to meet Mercedes Olaton. She's a remembrancer. We take a quick interlude to meet Mercedes Olaton. She's a remembrancer. Remembrancer. Got it. She's a She's a remembrancer. She's a remembrancer. Basically a journalist attached to the Great Crusade. And much like real life journalists, they get absolutely fucked on at every turn in this book and any other book they're in. Shit gets fucked for back into the fight. Garviel fights some guys who are invisible before he makes it to where the Emperor is. Not that Emperor. They have a cute little back and forth and then hits the reader with the first philosophical thought of the book. You could have just left us alone, says the Emperor. Not the Emperor. You get the point. Anyway. The false Emperor comes alive and looks like a god, but gets put down by one bolter shot by none other than Horus Lupercal. To round out this intro, Mercedes Olaton asks Loken why he couldn't leave them alone, and like any good politician, he doesn't answer and asks for a better question. She also asks about the Warmaster, and Garviel basically comes while talking. We get way too much about how the expeditionary fleet works. They're just genocidal crusade groups that flew out from Terra and brought people into compliance. After a funeral for the Emperor, to help win hearts and minds of the newly integrated human worlds, we meet some of the remembrancers. Got it. Euphrates Keeler, Ignace Karski, and an iterator of the Imperial Truth, Kirill Sinderman, or as I like to call them, human plot devices. Now we meet Torgadon, a real bro of the Lunar Wolves. Loken and Torgadon talk while sparring, which is the Astartes equivalent of chatting over coffee, and happens again and again and again and again. Anyway, point of their coffee catch-up, turns out Loken is set to join a secret group, but we'll get to that. Going back to the human plot devices, the author wanks off on how special iterators like Kirill Sinderman are, but basically they're the human equivalent of the McDonald's marketing team with a religious zealotry for science. We then learn that Kirill Sinderman is extra special. He's like head iterator or something. He then wanks off to a crowd of 2,000 other iterators saying how good they are, and how they are the only ones who know the truth of the galaxy. Loken and Cinderman chat after the circle jerk is done. Turns out Cinderman and Loken are butt buddies and they philosophize on how war is necessary. We learn that because Loken has thoughts and feelings, rather than just being 400 kilos of pure raw rage, he will be a good member of the secret group. Meanwhile, Mercedes, another human plot device, gets to the surface of Not Terra, where just a day before the Lunar Wolves kill-streaked the local populace like they were rushing for a nuke. And she, like an Asian tourist, takes too many pictures and asks stupid questions. And, like an art student, she waxes and wanes over how amazing it is to feel real trees, since all the trees on Terra are long gone. She then chats with Loken and tells Mercedes how she is now his ghostwriter. Not that she was gonna say no, but it wasn't a question. 2022, guys. Consent, come on. Loken then steps in some water and cosplays a cult with a couple other Lunar Wolves, Horus Aximand, Tarek Torgadon, and Ezekiel Abaddon, and joins their frat called the Mournival. This is the secret group, in case you're wondering. This frat of 4 brothers advise Horus on matters of state and shit. Skipping to plot device number 2, Ignis Karaski, he's a writer who drinks. So he's a writer. He too is on the planet's surface and is listening to someone saying something about something before deciding it's boring and tries to leave. Soldiers tell him he can't because of insurgents, but they'll happily leave Mercedes by herself in the middle of nowhere. And as an art student, Carcasi sees it as his solemn duty to go traipsing around the back street and see what he can see, so he sneaks away. He sees some really sad shit about missing people and deaths and massacres because, you know, the planet was in a full planetary assault just yesterday, and he gets inspired and does what artists do best. Get drunk, talk to themselves, and get killed by the military for expressing opinions. The Mournival then all meet up on the ship for discussing of where they're going next. We meet Malagust, who's Horus's right hand, and is a really old crippled space marine, who may be relevant later. And we find out Aximan has a foot fetish. We then get to meet Lord Dawn. Loken says the crusade will end one day, and an Imperial fist called Sigismund tells him he's dumb. Human plot devices 1 and 3 are heading to the surface with Loken after he promised that the 10th Company would clean up the last bits of resistance. Keeler gets some cool photos or whatever just as Loken's heading down to the planet, and we hear the villain's name for the first time. Samus. Pretty much bang on the end of the first act and we're set for the second. If you've fallen into the I've never read this series before category, then I highly recommend this and the other 2 books in the opening trilogy. Then come back for the memes and I can tell you all about the other 57 books in this series, eventually. And you can pick and choose. The first trilogy of books are gold. If you'd never heard about Warhammer, you'd still love it. Anyway, moving on, Loken and co are on the planet again, making the world compliant, assaulting the last stronghold of local insurgents. One of his sergeants is mad, which is important later for reasons. His name's Jubal, but we also get an introduction to Terminator armor in the next part. Now, the way this is described here makes it sound badass. The reality is a little less cool. A local Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum officer tells Loken it's haunted with spirits, and Loken, being the good little Imperial truth boy he is, almost pops a blood vessel trying to explain that away. The Imperial truth being that there's no such thing as demons. Fucking amateurs. Terminators go up the hill to storm the stronghold and the bullets slap off them like the slap off Chris Rock. Yeah. Anyway, they blast them away. The human plot devices land on the planet at the stronghold and they'll be important later. Maybe. Everyone frets over Samus and throw theories around like Reddit trying to solve the Boston bombings. The Astartes tear into the stronghold in the mountain and find out it's a temple of sorts that the rebels were defending. Loken monologues about how the men would be scared of them in their crusade to bring the greater good. The Imperial truth to them. The whole thing is over with thousands of rebels dead and no Astartes lost in 68 minutes. They blasted through the stronghold like they were going for an any % speedrun. As they're cleaning up their mess, and by that I mean leaving no survivors, they find Samus. Maybe. Jabal, remember that guy I mentioned earlier? Sees some words in a waterfall and the first recorded Astartes on Astartes kill occurs. Samus has corrupted Jabal's mind. Quick note, this is like how Black Library works. Like any good thriller or action movie, we're given a second to know the soldier, then he dies, or something happens. It's good in the hands of a good writer, but I swear to fuck if I have to read one more long drawn out chapter telling me the life story of someone who's gonna die 2 pages later, I'll scream. And that's definitely going to happen because I'm reading all 60 of these fucks again. Let's go! Throwback time, we are treated to another talk between Human Plot Device 1 and Loken, where Loken basically admits that Space Marines are emotionally stunted, which makes the Primarch squabbles, which play out like spoilt 14-year-old teenagers, make a lot of sense. And like a good little reporter, she decides to not let the public know that their warriors commit war crimes for fun, and cannot fathom that the destructions of billions is, you know, not great. So we go back to the moment that shocked the nation. Jabal killed another Space Marine. Loken lives and dies by the rules so badly he'd make an Ultramarine blush. So he doesn't immediately shoot Jabal, and instead they punch each other like real men for about 10 seconds. The Human Plot Devices, Kirill and co. get to walk through the slaughter wrought by the Astartes, and they understand that war is hell. They then walk into the chamber, since they've been told it was clear, and see Jabal smashing Loken's ribs as hard as you should smash that like button. They all tremble and hide in the corner. Kirill gets bones broken as the Astartes dish out collateral damage like it's going out of style. Jabal then gets warp strength, and Loken plus a couple others get their ass beaten, so Loken decides stabbing him is actually the best way to go, and kills him. Except he didn't. Jabal gets up and starts to transform into a warp beast where he kills a human plot device that we've known for 4 pages that I can't be bothered explaining. And then Loken kills it in an epic fight scene that we never see. Loken then talks to Cinnamon after they're back on the ship, where they both agree on the state-supported story, saying Jabal turned, but it was actually a wild beast that just jumped into the room at the same time Jabal fell down a hole. They then also rationalize away the possession of Jabal by calling it a viral infection. The mental gymnastics would win gold in any other universe, but these competitors are just getting warmed up. Horus then tells Loken about the warp in a little one-on-one 101 class. In this part about the warp, Horus completely understands that the Emperor went back to Terra to unlock the secrets of the warp. I wish this series had been written by like only 3 writers rather than the dozen or so who make up the series. Don't get me wrong, these guys probably write better than anything I could, but the inconsistencies in characters and their motivations are astounding. If you're like me and you spend a lot of time with this series, you probably have your own coping mechanisms, but if you're new and you haven't created your own story yet, let me just give you a quick rundown on my copium. These stories are all from unreliable narrators. What happens in these stories must all be taken as hearsay. The truth is intertwined throughout all 60 books, but how events happen may be exaggerated or constructed as if the narrator only has access to the secondary or even tertiary sources. There's sometimes primary sources, but not always. Anyway, I just pretend they're like the Herodotus, Thucydides, and Plutarch of this universe. For example, the Trojan War happened, but gods didn't descend from the sky. Anyway, that's how I cope. On with the story. So, remember at the beginning when I said we're not here to fornicate with mega arachnid? If you got it, great, you know what's coming. But if you don't, ooh boy, strap in. We open on Saul Tarvitz, a captain of the Emperor's children, fighting what he calls mega arachnids. Imagine spiders or bugs from Starship Troopers, but built to be like samurai warriors, with blades for hands, and rather than shooting web, they just ooze machismo and rage. Anyway, the Emperor's children have landed on the planet of Murder to reinforce the Blood Angels. It's not going well. Astartes are getting torn to shreds by these augmented creatures. Lucius, an important character for later, as well as Tarvitz, are on the world of Murder and find nothing but more mega arachnids that attack them out of nowhere, fight them for a few seconds, then fuck off. Finally, they find out what happened to the 1,000 or so Blood Angels that had been sent to the planet before them. They're all eaten by the mega arachnids. These things are fucking gnarly. On the flight over to Murder, Loken finds out about the Warrior Lodge, another secret society. A gathering of brothers that belies ranks and just seems like the Astartes equivalent of a socialist Freemason society. Following a short interlude with the HPDs, where we learn much about nothing, Axeman invites Loken to a lodge meeting. Then we're off to Murder again. We'll come back to this. Back on Murder with the hanging bodies, Tarvitz sees it as his civic duty of terrorism to blow up the trees holding the dead. Other parties, seeing the blast from Tarvitz's act of, patriotism? Group up with them, and Eidolon, Lord Commander of Emperor's Children, takes after his Primarch and throws a hissy fit that Tarvitz's patriotism was the most significant thing the man-children of the Emperor have achieved. The mega arachnids try to rebuild the trees, but the workers are ambushed by Tarvitz and are killed in glorious combat. Alrighty, back to the ship. Garviel attends the frat party of the Lunar Wolves. The Illuminati basically say they want Loken so he doesn't cause a fuss. Loken, being the upstanding Astartes he is, doesn't really want to join. Much like joining a cult, he finds out that they're not that bad. The end of the chapter reads like a girl's sleepover. After that nice feel-good cutaway, we return to Murder when the Lunar Wolves drop and save the Emperor's children from death. Eidolon isn't happy and gets all butthurt because his uber-masculine pride blinds himself from being seen as anything but hyper-masculine. Just you wait. Torgadon and Tarvitz talk about the good old days and how their Primarchs are butt buddies. We also meet Iacton Cruz, an old Lunar Wolf. He's like the old war story grandparent that won't shut up. He's been in the Legion since before the discovery of Horus. He gets into some trouble and later does some pretty cool shit, but we'll get to that. Loken reads the book Cinnamon gave him and finds something he doesn't like, so of course he goes and visits Keela in her quarters. Keela had taken some pictures of Jubal and she had gone over the edge. Loken and her dance around the topic, but it's in Loken's mind now. The warp exists. There's a quick part about the Ulanor triumph, but the event is covered in like 16 different books, so I'ma feed it to you in the same way the Black Library does. Slowly. Ulanor was when the Emperor left and made Horus the War Master. And that's all you get for now. Moving right along. Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, himself has appeared in the system of Murder. Everyone's off planet having a good time, and by a good time I mean they all committed genocide on Murder for 6 months, until they meet the Interex, a human splinter who had subjugated the mega-arachnids and exiled them to the prison world of Murder. After finding this out, Horus doesn't want to kill the Interex, while everyone goes full Hitler and cries for another glorious genocide. Turns out the Interex are like the Peter race, having incorporated the Kinnebrak into their citizenry and putting the mega-arachnids in a reservation, as they call it, because that works every time. While the proceedings with Peter are going on, the tax collectors come and tell Horus they need to start collecting taxes. Horus tells them they'll throw the tea into the ocean if they start imposing this. Alfarius and Lionel Johnson, Primarchs of the Alpha Legion and Dark Angels respectively, also ask for his help, and of course fucking Erebus decides to come along. Fuck this guy. Anyway, a couple of the boys decide to spar. Erebus and Lucius are having a big bout, and Torgadon says that Loken will jokingly take on the winner. Lucius ends up winning, and Loken steps into the ring. Lucius is all arrogant until good guy Chadicus Loken just straight up punches him in the face and knocks him flat on his ass. Back to Horus having to make decisions, he decides to go to Zenobia, the capital city of Peter, and talk with their leaders. While here, Peter takes them through the Hall of Weapons, and we're introduced to anathemes, living weapons. Think sentient weapons in D&D. Anyway, Horus and Peter can't find common grounds as the Imperium of Mankind is very stringent in their goal. Horus thinks differently though, and thinks an alliance may be possible. Spoiler alert, it's not. Loken ends up on guard duty for a dinner where Horus and Peter try one final time to make ends meet, and he talks to one of the Peter commanders about demons. It's here that Loken discovers chaos after the Peter commander gives him a quick summary. Before it can be fully explained, however, Peter attacks seemingly out of nowhere. Loken and the other guards manage to get Horus out from dinner by summarily dismantling the Peter soldiers. They find out the Hall of Devices where the weapons were held has been blown up and someone has stolen one of the weapons, the anatheme. Wonder who? They cut through Peter, even as the War Master talks about how the Interex had thought them to be agents of chaos, and they were just starting to get along. Anyway, they smash Peter to pieces, and Horus decides the path of the Emperor set down is right. They should all be subjugated or killed. He also changes the name of his legion from Lunar Wolves to Sons of Horus. We then get a few inserts of the HPDs, Cinnamon is reading, Karasky is drinking, and Keela is praying to the Emperor. Wait, what? No. I'm sure that's nothing. Everyone knows the Imperial truth is... We leave the Lunar Wolves, Sons of Horus, as they set out to a little moon in the Darwin system. Davin system? Darwin system. Davin. Dagobah. Shit's about to get real. Anyway, that's been Horus Rising and marks the beginning of this bonkers undertaking of mine. If you like what you see and want more, check out my Patreon and consider subscribing. I'm an art student, so I can be bought. Until next time, this has been Vorpal Productions, and strap in for the wildest ride and the spiciest memes.
Goodbye.